Pete, what do you mean am I stressed?
Well, you thought you'd lost everything.
Oh, God. My notes, I really do. And I don't understand technology all that well. So when I commit my thoughts and my mind droppings to my iPad, and then suddenly it decides to have hysterics or a nervous breakdown or something, I think, oh my God, why? If I just had a goddamn... I mean, I carry a pen with me. Look, there, a lovely old-fashioned fountain pen. Fountain pen and paper. That doesn't sort of wipe itself, does it? No. There's a lot to be said for the old world, I got to tell you. Pete, listen, I've got to ask you, on Monday you ran a song, and I looked at it and I couldn't pick... Was it Gordon Lightfoot?
Yeah, a very young
incredibly young.
Young Gordon Lightfoot. Yes.
An incredibly young Gordon Lightfoot.
And that's his favourite of all the songs he's written.
What was that called?
Song for a Winter's Night. That's his favourite song.
Song for a Winter's Night. I loved his 10 Degrees and Getting Colder Down by Boulder Down.
Yes.
That was lovely.
Yeah.
Susan's Floor.
Yes.
Second Cup of Coffee.
So many. There are so
Oh, wonderful. But I didn't realise that he was sort of that kind of young matinee idol kind of look.
Well,
I don't know how old he was, but he couldn't have been...
That would have been late 60s probably.
Yeah, well, that's when I think I bought. I think I bought his first album in the 60s.
Yeah, 65 I think was his first album.
Yeah.
Home from the Forest.
And then yesterday, Dolly Parton doing "I Will Always Love You."
Oh, yes.
She wrote it.
She did.
Oh God, I love Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Like you love Emmylou Harris.
Yes. Yes.
What a hopeless bunch of idiots we are.
Yes.
But at least I have got Dolly Parton's car.
You have.
I have.
And Emmylou Harris would have sat in one of the seats.
She would have sat in one of the best friends. They are.
Yeah.
But you know the story about that "I Will Always Love You"? It was picked up by what was her name? She made
Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston made a big hit of it.
Yeah.
But long before that, Elvis Presley wanted to record "I Will Always Love You."
Did he?
Oh yeah. But unfortunately, the Colonel had this funny arrangement whereby Elvis would not record a song unless he owned it.
Yes, yes.
So why? And she wouldn't. She didn't need the money, I guess. So she didn't hand over the copyright. Yeah. I'd have loved to have heard Elvis Presley doing "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah. The interesting thing about that song, what I just heard, she presented that to her publisher, and she wanted to record it.
What, didn't like it?
She wanted to record an album, and her publisher said, "No, you just write the songs. We don't want you to sing. We just want you to write the songs."
Dolly Parton?
Yeah, and that song was written for the guy who said, "We don't want you to sing."
Okay. How weird is that?
There's some strange decisions made, I tell you.
And I was at an auction on Saturday, you know, just bric-a-brac and stuff, and I saw a pile of albums. I've got albums, but this one I was so tempted to buy the whole pile just to get this one album. But I think I've got the CD of it, which is called Trio, which is Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris.
Well, if you haven't, I've got it.
Yeah, isn't that a wonderful album?
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful.
Oh, God. Have you got any videos you can run on our show with that?
I can dig them up.
There's a wonderful thing that Dolly Parton did called Wildflower.
Yeah, I can find them, but I'll put them in next week.
Yeah.
I've got an Alison Krauss for tonight. Simple Love. Yeah, beautiful song.
All right, lovely, beautiful, beautiful music, Pete.
Thank you.
Now, I think we have a brief window of opportunity here to talk about the Bruce Lehrmann, Brittany Higgins saga. Oh, God, what a saga it is. Now, what was the line? On the balance of probabilities, Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins. The findings of Justice Lee announced Monday. Justice Michael Lee, God, he's got style. did a whole TV series around him. Justice Michael Lee has handed down his 3-hour deliberation on this infamous defamation case, which is another chapter in the long continuing saga of the whole wretched thing. Watched by so many people, by the way, on YouTube, that it brought down the entire channel. Wow! Well, that tells you it's a hit story. A 324-page judgment. Bruce Lehrmann versus Channel 10 and Lisa Wilkinson. I guess that is Bruce, could have included Brittany Higgins in that, but that would be less than chivalrous. Not that the guy sort of stands out as being terribly chivalrous. Liman came through a criminal trial. He was accused of rape because of a, what can I call it, a jury transgression. There was no finding of guilt. Which brings us to an interesting point. After this, very credible, believable judgment, could they put him back on trial? The double jeopardy thing, if he'd been tried and found not guilty, they couldn't have put him back on trial for the same crime. But there was no conviction. I haven't heard anyone bring up that point since all of this began. They could try him again.
I did hear someone mention it.
Oh, really?
I did hear someone, yes. He may have made a big mistake for that reason.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would think it would be jeopardy for him. I've got a feeling this lawyer's picnic will never be over. Instead of letting Lisa Wilkinson turn it into a women's liberation, Me Too thing, Channel 10 should have just turned it into a mini-series. It's got all the ingredients of a hit show. But sadly, they mightn't know a hit show if they fell over it. I don't know. But to me, the problems go right back to the beginning. The extended period of time before Brittany made the accusation, going to the media before the police, no forensic evidence, no witnesses, a typical he said, she said sort of case. Very difficult to argue, very difficult to defend. I don't think the judge thought very much of either individuals, Brittany or Bruce. Both of these, and this is, I think, an accurate quote, both of these people have credibility issues and are unreliable witnesses. This case was different to the criminal case, where it was about reasonable doubt. He was entitled to reasonable doubt. And there would have to always be reasonable doubt without forensic evidence and without a witness. This case before Justice Lee was on the balance of probabilities. Clearly, the judge thinks they had sex, which begs the question, when she woke up, clothes neatly folded, I assume without any afterglow. I've never had a... Pete, have you ever had an afterglow?
No.
I don't know. Afterglow. Anyway, we could do a whole program on afterglows, I suppose. What happened between that moment when she woke up and her going to the project on Channel 10? Could it be that none of this saga was Brittany's idea? Perhaps it was somebody in pursuit of a good, juicy story. A bunch of Labour supporters who saw an opportunity? Huh? Justice Michael Lee found that on the balance of probabilities, Liman took this intoxicated woman back to a private, secluded place. And we could do a whole thing on the fact that the security people should never have allowed them into the building, particularly without their security passes, but never at 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, he took her back there, so the story goes, or so the Justice Lee's assertion goes, or judgment goes. He took her back to this secluded place and raped her. She was not willing, or able to give, or withhold her consent. I mean, this sort of behaviour, I would think, would be pretty rife among young people. Pretty rife. But it is dangerous for anyone, let alone young women. You don't put yourself in a position like this. I go back to my original comment that got me the sack from 5AA. The silly little girl got drunk and should take responsibility for her behaviour. And you know what? I would say that same thing again today. No young person should put himself or herself in harm's way. Live cautiously, defensively. But this brings me to ask again, why did the new Labor government, I asked this question before, never got an answer, why did this new, at the time, Labor government give Brittany Higgins a multi-million-dollar payment for no apparent reason? Why? Well, I think the opposition have asked a few questions, but never as vigorously as I would have asked them. And why would Bruce Lehrmann, as the judge said, he got out of the lion, it's a great quote, he got out of the lion's den and went back in for his hat. Meaning he was out of the jaws of that criminal trial, he was out of that, still protesting his innocence, of course. And he went back into the lion's den for his hat. Meaning simply he was home free after the criminal trial, but decided to go on arguing. Quite rightly, the judge was scathing over Lisa Wilkinson's Logie speech. If she did get it cleared by a lawyer, I don't know. Strange legal opinion. The judge says this was grossly improper, and she should have known better with 40 years of journalistic experience. Ultimately, I hope the security officers at Parliament House will be told to be more careful who they let into Parliament, particularly after hours, and particularly in the wee small hours. I mean, you can't, I would have stricter rules about who they'd let in during office hours. But you can't control who comes in during office hours. But you surely can control people who come in at 2 o'clock in the morning, for God's sake. Who's going to pay all these costs? Some say as much as $10 million. Can I see another flurry of checkbook journalism? There's a bit more juice to be wrung out of this story, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. Now, I want to go to my telephone here, if you'll forgive me. When I say go to my telephone, a friend of mine heard the comments that we made here in the Court of Public Opinion the other day about the NDIS. And she really surprised me with what she said. Do you believe that this multi-billion-dollar fiasco and waste of money that they call the NDIS. Sanctions, allows, permits NDIS funds to be used for sex workers. The federal court finds against the NDIS agency, which has denied funding to a woman living with multiple sclerosis. Now listen to this. And Jane, I thank you for sending me this. I didn't have time today to print it out, but I'll take it to the dining room table on Friday because I want to talk more about it. People with disabilities can use National Disability Insurance funds to access specialized sex workers. The federal court has ruled. The federal court ruled unanimously, in favor of a woman who lives with multiple sclerosis and sought to include the services of a prostitute in her NDIS plan, her package. Despite the agency's position that it does not fund participation in sexual activity, the federal court found otherwise. The federal court said that the NDIS Act does not exclude sexual activities from being funded for support. Do you believe this? Now, I'm quoting from court documents here that Jane sent me. It goes on to say, nor has any exclusion been made under NDIS rules. So in other words, the NDIS could have excluded sex workers and prostitutes from being funded by the taxpayer. But it didn't, and it hasn't, and I suspect it won't. Now look, don't get me wrong. I don't believe, I don't sit in moral judgment on anyone. I think, I mean, you could do a whole program on so-called prostitutes or sex workers. They have a very, very reasonable function in society. And anybody who wants to use a sex worker, God bless him. Or in this case, God bless her. But you don't send the bill to the taxpayer. You know, this is ludicrous. This is Monty Python sort of stuff. The NDIS does not expressly exclude sexual activities, that is, sex workers, from being funded. Nor has any exclusion been made under the NDIS rules, the court has said in its judgment. The court goes on to say, in our opinion, there is no implied exclusion of such activities either, and indeed, in our opinion, the better view is that they intended these activities or support functions to be included. This is the Federal Court of Australia. Unanimous decision. Look, hire a sex worker if you want, but for God's sake, you don't send the bill to the taxpayer. And more importantly, on top of that, these people, the people who run the NDIS, the minister who has already proclaimed it's in the hands of organised crime, this man could step in and terminate that. God help us. God help us, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the hands of maniacs. Do you believe any of this, Pete?
Well, yes, you can believe anything these days.
I mean, you look, the NDIS, physiotherapists, psychiatrists, medical people, osteopaths, anything. But it's just beyond belief. No wonder it's totally out of control. What's the date, Pete?
17th.
17th? The Ford Mustang was formally introduced. God, I love Ford. I've got a Ford Mustang down there. Mine is a 65, so mine is 1 year later than... when was the first one? 64. It sold for $2,368. Very pretty car. And it remains to this day a very pretty car. The Ford Mustang, formally introduced, $2,368. Mine is a 65. But I'd buy a car maybe 12 months after it was introduced, just so that they ironed out the wrinkles. Give it a year to sort it out. 1937, Daffy Duck. Do you like, Pete, do you like Daffy Duck?
Yeah.
Ah. Daffy Duck, Warner Brothers cartoon character, created by Tex Avery and Bob Clampett, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies series, first debuts in Porky's Duck Hunt on this day in 1937. Yes, Daffy Duck. 1970, Apollo 13 limps back safely to Earth. Oxygen tank problems. But anyway, they made a movie out of it and learned a lot of lessons from it. The funeral of Prince Philip, consort to Queen Elizabeth II, is held under COVID-19 restrictions at Windsor Palace in England on this day in 1921. A formidable man and a great support for our beloved Queen.
2021.
What did I say?
1921.
Oh, sorry. 2000, you're right. 2021. 1875, modern snooker was invented by Sir Neville Chamberlain. A bored English officer in Jaipur in India. 1875. Okay. William Holden, American actor, Blue Night, Sunset Boulevard, Sabrina, Bridge on the River Kwai. Born in Illinois, he died in 81, born this day in 1918. American actress Doris Day weds trombonist Albert Jordan. She was only 19. Wow. That was in 1941. Linda McCartney, American photographer, musician, Wings, wife of Paul McCartney, dies sadly of breast cancer at just 56 on this day in 1998. Australian tennis star Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley wins her second WTA championship in Los Angeles, 1976. Christopher Columbus signs a contract with the Spanish monarchs to find the Indies, with the stated goal of converting the people to Catholicism and robbing them blind along the way. But in exchange, this was in 1492, in exchange they promise him 10% of all riches found. So I would suggest to you that their focus would have been on finding riches, not converting the heathens. I may be cynical. Reward and incentive will never let you down. Benjamin Franklin, US founding father, inventor, ambassador, and a bit of a roue too, Benjamin Franklin. 1790, he dies at the age of 84, probably from exhaustion. Thor, directed by Kenneth Branagh, starring Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman, premieres in Australia in 2011. Jerry Mock becomes the first woman to fly solo around the world in 1964. Oh, golly, I thought Nancy Bird Walton did it a lot. Oh, no, that was Australia to England and England to Australia, so that wasn't quite around the world, was it? Benito Mussolini flees in 1945, but they still got him. Anyway, Robert Atkins, the American dietitian, dies. Born 1930, died 2003. You got some music for us?
Yes, Alison Krauss, A Simple Love. It's a beautiful song.
A Simple Love.
Beautiful song.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much for your company, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Clayton and I, Jeremy Cordeaux, will be back tomorrow. Don't forget Friday, live streaming from the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com. If you'd like to tune in and have a little look at what we do. And you can do that anytime you like, because the programs that we've done in the past sort of go round and round in a loop, if you like. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.